Let's get right into it. Why digital IDs are a terrible idea. I don't think anybody in their right mind should have one, especially if you're a multimillionaire. Digital IDs essentially let the state, whoever is in power, whether that's if you like your current government or you don't, the next government can always change and then you don't like that one, and they will essentially be able to track everything you do. Where you go, because it will be tied to your phone SIM card, and phone SIM cards essentially track everywhere you use that SIM card. Even if you travel all around the world, if you have roaming, or even if you have it installed on your phone, it can track where you are at all times. It can also track transport tickets, so if you buy train tickets, tolls, geographical data throughout all of the country and all of the world as well. What you buy, it's linked to your bank account, it's linked to your credit cards, it's linked to your crypto wallet, it's linked to basically everything where you spend money. And countries that have digital IDs tend to also have central bank digital currencies, which work hand in hand. Your digital ID tracks where you are, what you buy, what you do, and your central bank digital currency is then the wallet that the government controls. Who you talk to, social media accounts will also need to be verified with a digital ID. Communications that you have with your friends, with colleagues, with anyone frankly, can be verified online with your digital ID and then can be tracked to you. So now, for example, we've been seeing some countries crack down on, really, some countries just don't have freedom of speech anymore. They crack down on criticism. That is going to exponentially increase because now they can truly track who you are online, even if you use an anonymous account, even if you use a VPN, because it's tied to your digital ID and you need that digital ID to open the social media account. What you say, everything you post, everything you send online is linked to your legal identity and also how healthy you are. Everything about you is linked to your digital ID. Essentially, the government will be able to know literally everything about you. When you buy train tickets, when you buy flight tickets, where you like to travel, what ads you like, what websites you like to visit, absolutely everything. Spend too much on meat, gas, or flights, you can get penalized because of ESG, climate apps, CBDCs, as I said, that will control your money, and essentially everything that you do that the government doesn't like, they can penalize. Support the wrong political cause, you're flagged. Just like in countries that people say are authoritarian or dictatorial, yeah, the West is going down that route, and even harder than some countries that they say are authoritarian. Have a friend who's on a watch list, which is very true. This happens, for example, in countries like China or North Korea. If you have somebody that is on a watch list or is flagged, you get flagged too, and you might even have a ranking of different people, and you might have a ranking of the whole country on how dangerous you are based on what you post online, what behavior you have, and they can categorize that behavior based on your digital ID. Bad driving, loud music, you miss something that the government told you to take. For example, you're traveling to countries that the government doesn't like, that can also lower your score in the eyes of the government. You know what I'm talking about. I have to be careful here on YouTube. Also, once a digital ID is tied to central bank digital currencies, this means that they can then implement time-limited money. You have to spend it on a certain amount of time. Geofence spending, so you can only spend it on certain places that they deem appropriate. Blacklisted purchases, for example, if they don't want you to buy flights, then you can't buy flights. Obviously, that's why I say use currencies that are not controlled by the government so that you can then still buy flights, buy fuel, buy ammo, buy basically anything that you like. They can also freeze your funds very easily. You disagree with the state, they can instantly lock your account. They can instantly not allow you to travel as well because your digital ID will also be used to travel. We've already seen some airports around the world, specifically in the West, you can travel with just your face. In some cases, you don't even need a passport. In a lot of cases, you don't even need anything, really. You just need your face. You go there or you present a small ID and that's all. And when you have digital ID, they can just lock it. When you try to go to the airport, you try to go to an international train station, you can't go anywhere because you are locked. And also they might tax you forcefully, and they might say that you owe taxes even though you don't because they can just take it straight from your account and your digital ID. So once you have digital ID and it's fully implemented, if you disagree with the government, if you do something that they don't like, you can't travel, you can't access your money, you can't work as well, which the UK has said that you can't work without a digital ID, you can't speak online, they might even cancel all your social media access, and you can't own property, you can't rent an apartment, you can't renew your driving license, you can basically get turned off. Then there's going to be automatic surveillance, essentially AI scanning your behavior 24/7 and determining the risk level. As I said, Estonia has already implemented this, or has said that they will implement it very soon, is that they will have different risk levels based on what you post online, your purchases, what you do on a day-by-day basis. They will have a risk level on what crimes you might commit in the future. So for example, if you look at a lot of Trump posts or you look at a lot of MAGA, they might think, ooh, he might be really pro-gun, he might commit a crime in the future, therefore let's put him on a watch list. Or if you watch really anything, the whole Middle Eastern issue that's happening right now, if you look at how to escape my country too much, they might think, oh, this person is gonna escape the country or not pay taxes or anything like that. They can always enforce it, and they might have that risk profile based on AI. And as we've seen, for example, with ChatGPT, sometimes AI is wrong. Sometimes AI has a bias, and obviously government systems will have that bias. To give you a full summary of what digital ID will look like in the future: full tracking, controlled access, social ranking based on your behavior, financial leash, because then they can just close your account or freeze all your funds. We've already seen this in many Western countries. Complete censorship, political demands based on whatever the current party wants. It's not just the government right now, if you like them, which I don't trust any government, I've said that many times. The next government could also just change their mind at all. And then obviously instant exile, even if you live in the country. So essentially they could just lock you out of everything. You can't even rent an apartment. You can't even buy an apartment. You might be on a locked list. You might be on a high risk list. You can't open a bank account. You can't literally do anything. You're essentially a stateless person. You're allowed to live there, obviously, because you're still a citizen, but you can't do anything. The best solutions to do this is to go to countries that don't give a single flying F about any of this digital ID things. Countries that truly provide freedom. If you're from a Western country and you want to go somewhere where they don't have this horrible mess of digital ID, the countries that I tend to recommend, for example, if you're looking for something more developed within the European Union, although the EU is obviously pushing for a fully digital euro and fully digital system for all EU citizens, if you still want to stay in the EU, I would choose Eastern EU states, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, etc., that are not following exactly what Brussels is saying, just like France, Germany, Sweden, and so on. My recommendation would be to be outside of the European Union, outside of the UK, outside of the US, outside of Canada, outside of essentially Western countries. Some countries you could choose. The Republic of Serbia. I'm a citizen of Serbia. I don't need to do digital ID. They're not tracking everything I do. I can pay in cash. I can essentially do whatever I like as long as it's legal. Montenegro, for example, a country that is going in the direction of joining the European Union, but still retains a lot of its sovereignty. Countries in Latin America, Panama, Paraguay, countries like Argentina, which yes, they do have some tracking systems, but the government isn't really efficient. They're not the best countries to live in the world. For example, in Paraguay, you're not going to have an amazing developed lifestyle. It's going to be heavily underdeveloped compared to wherever you come from if you come from the West, but you might want that because it's more freedom. That's why a lot of people go to Belgrade, Serbia. It's not the most developed place in the world, but they're not trying to track everything you do online. Places like Mexico, for example, the government truly doesn't care what you do as long as it's legal. And they're not efficient, to be honest, these governments. Other governments, for example, El Salvador, want millionaires to come into the country, get citizenship, and you have the opportunity to get citizenship as a millionaire. So as a millionaire, I wouldn't really stay in the West. I would have a second passport, Serbia, El Salvador, Caribbean countries, St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua, Dominica. These countries, you can donate money to them. In exchange, you get a citizenship, and then you don't have to worry about all this digital ID nonsense. You can have a St. Kitts passport. You can have a Serbian passport. You can move to Serbia. You can have a St. Kitts passport and move to Thailand. You can move to UAE, for example. They do have tracking. I would say it's much more benevolent tracking. It is not to know where you spend your money. It is not to control everything in your life. It is not to impose a certain thing on the population. Everybody's essentially a resident. Apart from the citizens, you're probably not going to be a citizen, so you can leave at any time. That's why a lot of UK millionaires are moving to UAE. Less taxes, better infrastructure, less crime, overall a much better lifestyle without all of this nonsense. So I would definitely recommend the UAE. I would recommend countries that want freedom, even though they have their own surveillance systems, but they're not going to affect you as much as these. Am I clear with that? Other countries, for example, Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, a lot of freedom. Yes, they're corrupt in some ways. Thailand and Philippines, for example, countries like Vietnam, you have to be careful. There's a lot of corruption, and if you do something wrong with some local or some woman, you might have some issues. But in my view, they're much more free than the West. And other countries like Mauritius, which serve as the ultimate plan B in case anything even more horrible happens. And if you want to be more adventurous, you can always look at the Eastern countries that I don't want to talk about them that much. For example, some people have commented like, oh, what about Belarus, Russia, countries like these, that even though they surveil their own citizens, for residents, they're not surveilling you, they're not checking everything you do, as long as you don't criticize the government. So I would recommend these countries. Look at European outside EU. If you need to choose EU, the East, Latin America, highly recommended. Some countries in Africa like Mauritius, although you need to be careful. Botswana also just came out with a citizenship by investment program. UAE, definitely a great option. Asia, specifically in Southeast Asia, look at these countries as the ultimate plan B. Other places like Georgia, Azerbaijan, Albania, Armenia, there are so many countries that are not following in these footsteps. Protect yourself, protect your money, protect your freedom. If you want to see all your options around the world, I made a list of all the countries to escape all these agendas, specifically the 2030 agenda. You can check out the video right here. It's popping, it has over 40,000 views at this point, and I explain all the options you have around the world. Check them out right here.